Mr. Speaker, as the father of 6 children, I too am very concerned about environmental risk to our kids, and I'm very concerned about the ending of the environmental progress we've seen in the refuse-to-energy industry to date. And let me be clear, there is no change because of the Sense Act in overall changes on SO2, and there is no issue with mercury because these plants already comply with their mercury requirements. We need to consider the health of our communities if these facilities close. This is a reasonable, balanced, and common sense approach. Let's not circle the wagons and say no to continued cleanup on the hillsides of Pennsylvania. Let's not say no to restoring streams. Let's not say no to the jobs that these plants represent. Mr. Speaker, my district is in danger and my constituents are at risk unless this bill passes. Coal refuse piles that have persisted for generations catch fire and burn uncontrollably, spewing toxic pollutants into the air. Acid mine drainage leaches into streams, turning them orange and destroying wildlife. Great mountains of coal refuse, reminiscent of moonscapes, feature prominently in the countryside, looming over towns, schoolyards, and farms. Without the hard work of the men and women of the coal refuse to energy industry, work that includes painstaking remediation, this problem would be far worse. And yet, EPA regulations that are blind to this industry's unique circumstances threaten to bring their work to an end. You would think our environmental regulatory agencies and conservation-minded members of Congress would be eager to find a viable solution to addressing this environmental problem and protecting vulnerable communities across coal country. Some members of this body, it seems, choose not to acknowledge the challenges faced by the coal refuse to energy industry. They look past the overwhelming good done by these plants as they seek to impose their environmental orthodoxy. It would seem, based on this afternoon's debate, that preventing uncontrolled coal refuse fires, ruined waterways, and environmental degradation is outweighed by an unflinching attachment to inflexible and unfair Washington environmentalist dogma. Contrary to what census opponents claim, these facilities will be forced to close if we fail to provide them with reasonable and achievable emissions limits. It may interest some in this chamber that the Sense Act has typically been a bipartisan proposal. In fact, both of Pennsylvania's senators, Republican Pat Toomey and Democrat Bob Casey, previously introduced an amendment that was much broader than the conservative and restrained bill on the House floor today. Despite it being a far more aggressive proposal, the Casey-Toomey amendment earned the support of a majority of senators. Back home, organizations that work to actually address Pennsylvania's environmental issues have rallied to the Sense Act. Both the Western and Eastern Pennsylvania coalitions for abandoned mine reclamation have endorsed my bill. Watershed groups have also issued letters of support. Some today have wrongly argued that the Sense Act picks winners and losers, that it somehow advantages small, endangered coal refuse to energy facilities. Somehow, in the minds of the bill's opponents, David became Goliath. They fail to see that the issue at hand concerns a small, socially beneficial industry unfairly battered by an all-powerful regulatory giant and fighting for survival. What is most striking about the opposition's mischaracterization is that the EPA has created winners and losers through its inflexible implementation of these rules, in which they refuse to treat these plants as a separate category. The Sense Act merely recognizes what the EPA should have acknowledged a long time ago, that coal refuse facilities are different from traditional coal-fired power plants. This bill eliminates the EPA's unfairness by giving these facilities a realistic chance at complying with air quality rules. Some today have suggested that the states could simply address this issue on their own, that my bill gets in the way of state autonomy. In fact, states have little to no autonomy in administering CSAPR, since any requested change must be approved by the EPA. So according to the Sense Act's opponents, the EPA, which has thus far refused to provide flexibility for these plants, would somehow have a change of heart and decide to approve of state-requested policy changes. I find that hard to imagine. Some have also charged that the Sense Act would threaten air quality, forgetting that this legislation specifically avoids causing any increase in state SO2 allocations. More importantly, without the remediation work fueled by this industry, the uncontrolled and environmentally catastrophic coal refuse pile fires that are far too common will only continue. Are the unregulated emissions from these fires not of greater concern to public health? It is unfair that some in Washington have pursued an unfair and uncompromising orthodoxy on this issue and have derided, in their zeal, an overwhelmingly successful private sector solution to a pressing environmental challenge. The Sense Act is about protecting vulnerable coal country communities from pollution and environmental degradation. It's about standing up for over 52 family-sustaining jobs, many of which are in areas that have experienced economic hardship. And these jobs come with names: Robert, John, Tim, James, Pat,